MEDDPICC qualification. We call this qualification methodology MEDDPICC. That's MEDDPICC, but you might have heard it referred to as MEDDIC. We prefer MEDDPICC because it includes the procurement piece, which even in relatively small purchases these days is a big opportunity management issue. By the way, you could type in MEDDPICC or MEDDIC into Google or search ChatGPT and you will pretty much get chapter and verse on it. Therefore, we're going to give you a fairly high-level view of it here based on our own experience of seeing it in operation across different pipelines. We do also have a separate playbook for MEDDPICC which is available to you. The M stands for metrics. There are two types of metrics that you can attach an opportunity to, namely big business metrics and technical metrics. Examples of business issue metrics are where companies want to dramatically increase profits, reduce costs, increase customer acquisition or customer retention, or even staff retention. These are big financial and risk-related issues which have a quantifiable impact on the business. Then there are technical metrics which are more function-based, such as increasing the speed of response to customers, quality scores, uptime, outages, throughputs, production and operation metrics, and so on. The point is this. Is your opportunity attached to any big quantifiable business and/or technical metrics in the target account? If your offering can be tied to a big result, it can mean bigger deals and better margins. The E in MEDDPICC stands for economic decision maker, although some people will also take it to mean executive decision maker, and those two can be the same person sometimes, or they can be separate people. Anyway, the reason this criterion is separated out is that you need to have access to the person who not only can say yes, but can provide the necessary funding or investment, or as they say, find the money. So typically, they would be called an executive level influencer. They decide what's a priority, what attracts investment and funding, and ensure that vendors and their solutions are aligned to big, important company initiatives. The first D in MEDDPICC stands for decision criteria, and it's asking you how the customer is going about deciding how to make this purchase, or this decision, or this investment. For example, do they already have a set of criteria, which is something that is more likely to apply to bigger purchases where the company has prior experience buying a solution or system? This is sometimes referred to as the spreadsheet list. However, in many B2B purchases, there is no set of decision or selection criteria, and in fact, different stakeholders can have lots of different ways of deciding things in their head, even though some of the criteria might not be that important. Another meaning of decision criteria is, to what extent have you as the vendor introduced criteria that not only might the customer not have thought about, but no other alternative can match? This is a very powerful way to differentiate yourself in the market and to close out competition and alternatives. These are called strategic criteria, and you should be practiced in their articulation. The second D in MEDDPICC stands for decision process, and that is asking the question, how will the buyer or buyers go about their whole buying process and decision process? Now, MEDDPICC usually assumes that there is a buying or decision process, but that is not always the case. Very often in B2B sales, the problem is there is no decision process, and you have to create one, although for bigger purchases there will always or usually be some level of pre-planned formality. A fault in the MEDDPICC methodology is that it doesn't highlight the importance of working to a timeline, even though it might be implied in the decision process. We would strongly recommend that when you're using MEDDPICC or MEDDIC, and when you're looking at the second D or decision process, you ask yourself what the timeline is looking like and make sure that you and the buyer are working to a known decision time and a critical path to get you both there together. We have seen lots of opportunities sitting in pipelines that were perfectly qualified using MEDDIC or MEDDPICC, but the timeline was neither known nor evident. The P in MEDDPICC stands for procurement, or paper processes, or even procedures and policies. It's asking if you have taken into account that to get your deal across the line, you will have to get through a series of procurement hurdles that can include vendor vetting, security and cybersecurity vetting, not to mention a whole bunch of contacts, as well as set-piece contracts and terms and conditions. You can have a perfectly healthy deal, except it's taking too long to get it across the procurement line, and in the meantime, something else happens and the deal goes south. So the P is important. The I in MEDDPICC technically means implicate the pain, which is a complicated way of saying you need to explore and discover what the buyer wants to accomplish. Specifically, if you want to build a healthy opportunity, you need to identify the buyer's current context and situation, the gaps, the challenges, the problems, and the opportunities they face in a particular area. That tells you the capabilities the buyer's company is missing and how your product and solution is a bridge to better results. It's here you need to think about not just the value you are claiming to deliver, but rather, like in the medical field, the method or approach to delivering the treatment. The first C in MEDDPICC stands for champion, and it's asking if you're working with an executive who essentially is promoting your cause or promoting you as the best alternative. Sometimes we say that your champion is the person who does the selling for you when you're not there or in the room. Champions should not be confused with supporters nor advocates, who offer a much softer type of help and, in fact, sometimes can be a distraction. By the way, some other methodologies refer to the champion as the mobilizer who makes things happen, organizes backstage passes into the path to power, and makes sure that the salesperson is kept within the right circle of political influence. A mobilizer can be contrasted with a talker who loves engaging with vendors but usually doesn't make things happen. The second C in MEDDPICC stands for competition, but strictly speaking, it refers to all forms of competition or all alternatives. Those alternatives include direct and indirect name competitors, a completely different approach, an internal solution, or doing nothing at all, with the latter winning out in most cases, i.e. the status quo.